Good afternoon to all of you. I would like to start this with a comment about my generation, which I believe has an advantage that the rest of the countrymen don't have, particularly after 1991. As you heard in the previous session also, it was a kind of watershed year when a lot of things changed, and I believe that the VUCA part of this sort of program really started in 1991, particularly in relation to the financial markets in India. And since then, as I said, my generation has enjoyed one advantage over the others, which is that the exchange rate, broadly speaking, follows our age. So when we were in our 30s, the exchange rate was in the 30s, and when we were in our 40s, the exchange rate was in the 40s, and now that we are in our 50s, the exchange rate also, until very recently, has been in the 50s. And honestly, even as recently as May 2013, I was thinking that I will become a senior citizen before the rupee becomes a senior citizen, or the rupee dollar exchange rate crosses that line. That it has not happened, or rather that it has happened earlier than my age crossing that limit, tells you how difficult it is to try and forecast exchange rates, and also underscores, I think, how important it is not to look at exchange rate forecasting as the primary function of a treasury manager and try to manage exposures based on a particular level which one thinks is bound to happen. Many people here in this country who have the habit of saying that XYZ is around the corner and something is bound to happen and something can never happen. But I always tell people that sort of one movie title which I am always reminded of in the context of exchange rate volatility in particular is the old James Bond film which says, "Never say never again." Never is a word that you should never use in relation to exchange rates, because one doesn't know what exactly one is likely to hit. As you can see, huge amount of volatility increase over the last 3-4 years, creating obviously a large amount of uncertainty as far as the exchange rate is concerned. And we must not forget that irrespective of whether it's the offshore market driving the onshore market or whether it is the onshore market that is creating the volatility, the fact of the matter is that in the Indian context, firstly, it is only the rupee dollar exchange rate that gets traded. All other currencies are actually linked to the rupee through the dollar. So any non-dollar currency that you have necessarily means that you're taking on two risks, the rupee dollar risk and the dollar currency risk. The other is that the Reserve Bank of India is a bit of a big daddy in the market. The Reserve Bank of India pretty much controls what the exchange rate has been over the last many years, and it has gradually removed its sort of vice-like grip on the foreign exchange markets since 1993, when the market determined exchange rate first came into being. But don't forget that they are the big daddy in the market, and they can pretty much change the rules of the game, as even Governor Rajan has demonstrated over the last 3 months. It's a bit ironical that a man who has been a strong votary of market-determined asset prices in the industrialized world has come here and has taken so many decisions which clearly show that he is in no mood to allow the exchange rate to run away from him, and that he is in charge of what that exchange rate and what band that exchange rate is going to work in. In fact, Reserve Bank of India's attitude to the market determined exchange rate has often reminded me of a poster that I used to see during my college days. You know, the poster had a cat sitting on a throne, and the poster read that you are entitled to your opinion as long as you agree with mine. And Reserve Bank of India's attitude to the exchange rate is exactly identical, that the market can determine the exchange rate provided we agree with what the market is going to do. And their broad perspective has been to try and keep the exchange rate stable in what is known as the RER index terms. That is, the inflation adjusted trade weighted exchange rate tends to be very, very stable over long periods of time. And whenever it goes astray by more than 10-12%, they come into the market and make sure that it comes back to that band of plus minus 5% or worst case plus minus 10% with which they are comfortable. I think important to look at the reasons why the rupee fell so sharply from sort of 54, 55 rupees per dollar just about a year back to something like 68, 85 at its bottom in August, September of 2013. It historically, and therefore not at all surprisingly, whenever we have seen a very strong rupee, it has inevitably been followed by a very sharp jump in the current account deficit. Except that this jump in the current account deficit comes with a lag of 12 to 15 months. We had a sharp fall of the rupee in 2008-2009 when the rupee first tumbled to 52 rupees per dollar. And then when capital flows started coming in very strongly, the Reserve Bank of India and the Ministry of Finance decided to allow the rupee to appreciate right up to 44, 45 rupees per dollar. Although according to the RBI's own index, the exchange rate appreciation should have been stopped at around 47, 48. It is this 10% overvaluation of the rupee which set the stage for the current account deficit problems, which, as I said, we have seen in the past as well, and created the volatility, because once the capital flows dried up, we had imports much more than exports. Our invisibles or remittances from Indians working abroad and software export receipts were not sufficient to bridge the gap. And when the gap became so large that it became impossible for capital flows to also bridge the gap, the inevitable fall of the rupee took place. Certainly worsened in the month of May, June, July, partly on account of what I think is a little bit of a shabby handling of the overall situation at that point in time. There was a change made in terms of gold imports, which actually worsened the problem for the short term, although over the medium term, gold imports have fallen very, very sharply. My own view on that, however, is that all that has happened is that the gold imports have been replaced by smuggling of gold, and to the extent you have higher gold smuggling, you are also going to see a reduction in the remittances from non-resident Indians working abroad. People who are working in the particularly in the Middle East tend to then send their dollars to their families in India, not through the official banking channels, but through the gold smugglers' unofficial channels, who obviously offers them a higher price or a better exchange rate for those remittances. So all that we have done is replaced the gold imports through NRI remittances reduction. So don't think that the fall in imports that we are seeing right now is going to in any way have any impact on the current account deficit reduction at all. What is going to have a far bigger impact is the jump in exports that we are seeing in the manufacturing sector, and which I believe we will continue to see over the next few months, quite possibly over the next year or two.